Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Get Geek podcast, where we celebrate geek, nerd, and pop culture. Each week, we deliver the best analysis for fans, by fans, on anything related to movies, TV, video games, comics, anime, and manga. We talk geek. And now, here's the Get Geek podcast.
I started too.
Okay, everybody started live now, guys.
Started? We are starting. This is starting.
Started now.
Starting now.
I don't know.
What is starting now? Hey, y'all. What's going on? Denizens of the internet. Welcome to another wonderful and lovely episode of the Get Geek podcast.
We're back.
We are back.
We
have
are
returned. Back. And who are we? I am Jose.
This is Wolfie.
AJ.
And Eli. Oh wait, you're last, so yeah. Eli. Yeah, I said my name.
Okay.
Eli.
Thank you.
And this is still wishing vacation was still on. Well,
Yeah.
little lagged.
Still a little lagged.
Eli, how is it that we are on episode 573 and you're still lagging on your introduction?
Wait, me? Oh, yeah.
There's always
I
like a
don't know.
pause when you introduce yourself. And not only is there a pause,
Oh.
but there's a kind of like a very interesting intro. It's always like, Eli.
It's like you're trying to remember your name.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
It's like,
man.
I think it's
Yes.
Oh God.
Yes.
or like the name you're using this week, I
God,
guess.
that reminded me.
He's GTA lagging. He's casually walking into the wall.
Yes. Yes.
Oh man.
The
Oh,
artist formerly known as Eli.
indeed.
Remember when we were on vacation and the TV kept lagging, so it would stop at like the
Yeah.
most inconvenient times, and we would be like, "What was I really supposed to be doing?" Like we were speaking for the characters that like stopped midway.
Yeah,
It was
I
buffering.
brought the Fire TV stick on vacation for the hotel because hotel programming sucks.
Mhm.
It's true.
But the problem is the internet in the hotel sucked even worse. So, buffering all over the place. That's what the kids are talking
I
about.
feel like you pay a premium on hotel rooms, not for the hotel room anymore, just for like good internet. Because like if you pay for a cheap hotel room, you always
That's
have
true,
really
actually.
terrible internet.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I mean, you also get like a bigger bed and stuff, but that's incidental. The speedier internet is more important.
Part of me was also being cheap because I could have upgraded to the faster internet for like $5, and I was like, nah, we're good.
Do it next time.
So
I'm taking it
part of
with
was-
me.
Yeah, part of me was being cheap also.
I'm taking the Fire Stick with me when I actually go out of town for about a week and a half next week. So because we want to see Ted Lasso, because Ted Lasso is awesome.
There you go.
We have the Apple TV Plus on that device. But anyways,
Alrighty then.
Anyways, yeah, let's get to this meaty conversation that we got to get to. Let's do all the things we got to do in the interim. As y'all know, the best way to support your favorite podcast, of course, is to like, rate, share, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms and all of our podcast platforms. If you have a bunch of podcast platforms, tongue-tied, subscribe to us on all of them. Rate us on all of them. Share them all. Engage us on social media, please. And that's just the best way to support your favorite podcast crew. And you can find us where all of your favorite podcasts are sold. So yeah, we're here for a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful conversation today, but we do have, I guess, a bit of big news that we have to quickly mention before we get to, again, the meat of the conversation. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'll kind of lead us into it, right? This is this big MCU news with Scarlett Johansson suing Disney because of the loss of revenue, essentially because Disney decided to split the release of the movie between the Disney Plus platform and the movie theaters, which essentially, because her contract was set up to do revenue from movie theater sales, she lost a lot of money. So I guess, yeah, I'll just open up the floor. What are your guys' thoughts on this
Right.
news?
I mean, I think that like this is a kind of like collateral and fallout that was going to happen with the shift that we've been seeing between streaming and the theater business. Um, it's it's kind of interesting to me because there is no more of a greedier kind of representation of corporate America than this, right? Because Disney
Mm-hmm.
already has like the movie industry on lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not only just the movie industry, but they got like the superhero movie industry on lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
right? They know they knew that like that Black Widow was going to be a big deal. They knew that like it wasn't gonna most likely flop or bomb or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and their service is doing great because of all the stuff that they got going on with Star Wars and Marvel and of course their own Disney properties and stuff.
Yeah.
But the whole reason that they did this is to drive people to sign up to get more subscriptions to Disney Plus. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't need money. They don't need any more money. So it's kind of crazy to me that they would still go this route, just to fatten the pockets, as if they couldn't wait just one more month.
You
Yeah.
know what's also sad? The fact that HBO Max, which technically falls under the umbrella of what, Warner Bros, right?
Warner
Yep.
Brothers, yeah, Warner Brothers.
Which is now
They
Discovery.
they even made the effort to pay these actors because they were also releasing it on HBO Max. Warner Brothers.
For which
Really?
property? Which movie was that?
They did it for Little Things with Denzel Washington.
Mm-hmm.
They did it for two other movies. I think one of them, I got to look up the article, but basically they were able to shell out at least 250 million
That's
to pay
smart.
these
That's
actors.
smart.
That could be the
Just
impetus
to
for the
cover the
lawsuit.
lawsuits.
Also, yeah,
Yeah.
that could be the impetus for the lawsuit. Scarlett probably looked at that and say, "Hey, they did that. Why aren't you doing it for us guys?" You know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting because you look at it in a kind of way and you say like Scarlett Johansson has enough money too. Like, why is she complaining about it? But it's true that it's completely unfair to say to the actor like, we're going to take away revenue from you, like Wolfie said, to drive subscriptions to our service and then not make a deal with you. Like apparently Kevin Feige had been pushing for because he was smart enough to see this coming. He's so smart enough to see everything coming. I think he is King the Conqueror, but he saw this coming and he saw how unfair it was for his actor. And it's another conversation too, which we can't even get into, but I just want to mention it. Basically, like because of the unequal pay to begin with that Scarlett Johansson had at the beginning of the MCU and beginning of her tenure, which evened out over time, it makes this something where Disney really should make that extra effort to make her more whole for this film that got delayed and all of these other issues. And I think the last point I have to make is to blame her for it the way that Disney did was a terrible move to kind of push this like, oh, she's being insensitive in this time of COVID. That was really, really
Yeah.
bad of
Yeah,
Disney.
that was bad.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
no,
the
that
other
shit's
two
terrible.
actors that I that I was talking about, Will Smith for King Richard and Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman 1984. Those are the other two that I saw were compensated for their release, for their movie's release on HBO Max.
So I think that this is actually a much bigger discussion. I think that this is less about the actors themselves and more about this like streaming war that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
where Disney as well as the actors are kind of like it's like a little bit of a tug of war where like they actually can't really give in an inch. If Disney really wants stream to be the main way that they release films, they can't give in like this little inch, as you know, terrible as it sounds, but like that's really what they're trying to do. They're like, well, if we have to pay extra just to be on stream, now we're gonna have to do that for every property, especially when stream becomes the mainstream. When this is how movies are released. This isn't because right now this is still sort of kind of like uh, a COVID project. I think
Yeah, it's still no.
Mm-hmm.
it's still new. It's still like it's still a toss up. I
Yeah.
still think that like the theater is going to end up winning out at some point. I think that like people will say will eventually, you know, tip the scale in the, at least I truly hope that like in this little war that the theater ends up winning out and people realize that like, okay, I want to go to the theater instead of watching it on stream first. So I don't
Well,
know.
let's take a look at a real quick look at the numbers because I want to wrap this up and get into our really meaty part of the thing, right? What we want to talk about is gonna be, very interesting and deep, but we need time for that. So I want to wrap this up quick. But opening weekend for Black Widow was not bad at all. It made $80 million. You got $60 million on top of that coming from Disney Plus with the subscribe, with the premiere access. Scarlett Johansson made the most money on this film out of any of her MCU projects. She was paid $20 million to star in Black Widow. So it's not like, she's hurting. Like, I think Jose had said that before. She's not hurting for money. She did get paid for it. I think what the issue is here is that there was such a huge drop off that second week because everybody went to go see it in movie theaters, and then after that, the people that saw it, they went to go see it, and then there wasn't that repeat the repeat viewings because you know what, I can watch it on Disney Plus. I paid $20 and I can watch it 3, 4, 5 times. So I think that's where the issue is. And she does have a point because, some of these contracts are based on residuals from the box office. And if you're taking that away from the actress or the actor, then like AJ said, make that financial effort to pay them. It was said that Kevin Feige was angry and embarrassed over this episode because he was pushing day and date release in the movie theaters only.
Yeah.
So, she does have a point, but you know what? We'll find out more as this thing plays out because you know how these lawsuits take forever.
Yeah.
So
I think
we'll find out eventually.
I think they're going to make that case.
It'd be interesting,
basically, that it's
that
Disney Plus was the reason for the drop off. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it'd be interesting to see like, the numbers overall, like for the entire compiled numbers for like her tenure as Black Widow from the very first one in Iron Man 2 to now, because $20 million sounds it's a lot for this film, but when you consider how much work she's actually put into developing the character,
oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
Be underpaid.
No,
But
no,
at the end of the
I'm
day,
not.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing that
She's
point.
definitely underpaid.
Because
But
she
before
was
this.
criminally underpaid in
Right.
Iron Man 2. So
but at the end of the day, Disney's gonna do Disney things because they have free will.
Oh, there you go.
Do they?
Okay.
Do they really?
Segue of the year? No,
I would say
Easter
drop
egg
the
segue?
mic. I'd say drop the mic, but then you might break it and not be a part of this conversation. So don't do that.
They're free to be evil.
So the whole topic of this episode, if you're already listening to this, is because you are tuning in for our discussion on the philosophy of Loki.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Speaking about that, is listening to this podcast free will, or are you predetermined to listen to this podcast?
That's the question that we want to ask and answer. The question, can it even be answered? Can it even be answered?
You have to listen to this podcast.
It cannot be answered.
It is part of your destiny.
Yeah.
It is your fate.
Oh man, can we get more subscribers if we tell them that it's their destiny to
listen to this podcast?
All right, so
I have a feeling that'll have the reverse effect.
So Loki, I think we all agree was an amazing first season. Thankfully, there's going to be a second season, but I think we all agree it was a great show. But it was particularly interesting of a show because of the questions that it posed, not just for the MCU, but just in general. The questions of destiny, fate, free will, and glorious purpose.
Spirituality, right?
How do you guys, and this is, I guess, going to be kind of like a free form conversation because, I don't know. Do we want to did we want to be like the timekeepers and have a predetermined list of questions we wanted to ask and topics, or are we just going to use our free will to talk about this? I mean, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about like the whole idea of fate, destiny, and free will, especially within the MCU and Loki?
I don't know. I think that's an impossible question.
Who wants
to
to
answer.
tackle it?
It's a difficult question.
I would love to hear Eli tackle it.
You're gonna let okay.
Mine?
Yeah, I want Eli to tackle that one.
Come on, E.
Bring it home.
Oh God.
Bring it home.
You are destined to be successful on this podcast conversation.
No.
Come on.
Because we're talking about free will. So.
Free will is an illusion, Eli.
The way that Loki portrayed the whole sense of free will and stuff. Are we just talking about Loki?
We're talking about
free will
Loki.
It's up to you.
MCU, real life.
Okay, I'm
yeah,
gonna go.
everything.
So I guess the way that the MCU brought up these questions by trying to, I guess, how do you say it? Shoot. By trying to portray like Kang the Conqueror and the Timekeepers as higher beings, I guess. I mean, I guess that was a pretty good way of having that concept put in there. I think it's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a different. That's the thing. It's a difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult topic to discuss because what is free will? You know, in Loki, there is no free will. In Loki, the Timekeepers and Kang the Conqueror have predetermined every single person's outcome, right?
In a sense.
Yeah.
So then,
see, total sense, right?
No.
That's the whole point of the show is that he who remains, or Kang, or whatever you want to call the character that Jonathan Majors played, he pulls the strings until the final moment, I guess, of maybe, or just moments before his demise, right? Like it was a similar thing to the Ancient One in the Doctor Strange films, where she can't see beyond her death. I guess part of his existence is he can't see beyond his death. But if you look at and see, I mean, that's the problem with this conversation. It kind of opens up everything that we've seen in the last 23 or so movies to complete scrutiny, because it's like, why did he allow this to occur with Thanos? Why did he allow Iron Man to defeat this villain? Why did he allow Ant-Man to defeat that villain? You know, why did he allow the snap to happen? It opens up a whole world of questions, but also like there's a definite idea, at least from what he says in that conversation at the end of the season of Loki, that there's no free will in the MCU. It's all entirely until, I mean, but it is a paradox too, and I kind of want to like see what you guys think about this, because in the end, there's no free will. At least it's implied until the moment that the Lokis kind of try to break this rigid universe that they live in. It's the Lokis that are trying to break this predetermined universe, and that's why they're such a threat in a way to Kang, or not. I mean, it's a really difficult conversation to answer. I mean, I'll throw it to somebody else because I have no idea how to put this one.
I think that free will does exist in the MCU, and I can give you kind of two examples of it.
Okay.
The first one is a movie that heavily dealt with free will and fate, and that was Infinity War. Infinity War was huge on whether things are predetermined or not, if this is supposed to happen. And probably the biggest point of all that kind of tells me that free will exists is the moment when Doctor Strange is on Titan and he's going into the future and looking at 14,605 possible outcomes, right? To me, that suggests that.
Wait, you have that number? Like, did you have that number on hand? Is that the correct number?
That is the correct number.
Wait,
Listen,
did you have it on hand?
No, I researched this beforehand, so you know how I am.
Kudos to you.
You know how I am. I'm not gonna. Yeah, it's because I remember it was like it's four. He could have just said over 14. No, he said 14,605 possible outcomes. But the point is, he went into the future
Mhm.
and saw the outcomes. So that
Mhm.
means at some point there was some, and this is going to tie into my second thing.
Mhm.
There was some variant of these characters making different choices,
Mhm.
which led to all those outcomes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And he only found the one.
but hold on.
And
Wait.
one real
Yeah.
quick thing. The second thing that tells me that there's free will in the MCU is the fact that variants exist. Because if you are on a predetermined path the entire time,
yeah,
there would be no reason why.
there would be a
Um,
variant.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And if you look at the TVA itself, it's built on variants. And remember the scene where Loki is walking with Mobius and he's looking at this huge mega city filled with variants that he's collected over time.
Mhm.
So to me, like I said, free will does exist. The TVA is an entity that's trying to suppress it,
Mhm.
but it can't do it completely because you already have the ability to make those choices, and that's where those variants come from.
Okay.
Okay, but hold on. First, I just want to point this out. I don't think the Avengers Infinity War, Doctor Strange super duper Matrix thing isn't an example of free will, because if he did, if he was looking at all these possible outcomes, wouldn't it be predetermined that he chose this one outcome?
Yeah, you can make the case for
Yeah,
that.
so it's not free will.
So but
No.
the point that there was that 14 million different futures, right? If it was predetermined, and again, maybe I'm simplifying this too much, he'd only see the one path.
How?
And think
because
about it this way.
because
But that's
there's no
alternate timelines.
but that's what I'm saying. If we're predetermined to be on the one path, then why would you see other paths?
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you're
it makes
if
sense.
you're literally saying that you have no way of making any choices, then that means you're down the one road. There's
Well,
no
look,
the other
fork in the
choices-
road.
No,
There's
but-
no exit
Yeah.
ramps and stuff like
The
that.
beginning of those other choices wouldn't even exist, basically, is what Walt is saying, Eli. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
there would be no off ramp to begin with. There would be no variance. There would be no timeline branches that the TVA has to prune. And what Walt is saying is a good point. Because those branches even exist in the first place, that means that free will does exist. It's just the TVA is trying to suppress it as a whole. And
right.
yeah, that's a great point.
Right.
But hold on.
I mean,
Mhm.
But what if? Because you know these other timelines are probably most likely caused by variance.
Yeah.
Well, are caused by
Yeah, they
variance.
are.
Well, they
Yeah.
are.
Making choices, making
So
free will
then-
choices of infinite choices.
What if those variants? Yeah, I know. But what if those variants
Wolfie's
were
head just
predetermined to make their choices?
See, he brings up that great point because you know what,
Oh.
you can
Oh,
you
man.
can give people the illusion of free will, right?
Yeah.
right.
Give them
But still
14
lead
million
them down the
choices.
path that they need to go.
So
There's the rub in the conversation right there.
Yeah.
so there's the so that's interesting because that's what Kang said that he did, right? Like, I think he was questioned on, like, well, what about all these variants? He's like, yeah, I know about all the variants, I know every single thing, but there's still one very specific, perfect, exact way to show that free will does exist. Free will exists because Kang decided to do all of this on his own accord.
Right.
That
There
alone
was
makes free will a thing, right? Because if Ken decided to not do it, then there would just be like the multiversal war, right?
unless he was
decided
predetermined to do it.
But see, that's the thing. We don't have anything to show that he
Right,
was
yeah, of
predetermined to
course.
do it. So that's the thing. So it's like, I think that, like, the show actually answers the question by saying that there is free will. It's just that one person is using his free or its free will to take away the free will of everyone else in the multiverse.
He's a time dictator.
Yeah.
basically.
And before I send it over to Jose real quick, also, what if the what if shows are what if shows and episodes on variants?
I think that
Well,
on the
it
what if
definitely
show
is.
that's
I
about to
think
come
Has
out.
to be the way that
I think that's
Right?
definitely
the way the
yeah.
vocabulary in
That's
the
kinda cool.
MCU
I just
exists
realized that. I
now
didn't think about
is
that.
they're all variants, right? Like they all have to be because there's going to be Captain
Mind blown.
Britain and like T'Challa is going to be Star-Lord, right? Like there's all these different versions, so they're definitely
Mhm.
variants.
Well, Captain Britain is a thing.
Yeah, Captain Britain is it,
Not
but also
Marvel
Captain Britain.
Zombies.
Yes.
Captain Britain
Marvel
is
Zombies.
Agent
Yeah.
Carter isn't a thing in the comics, right? Captain Britain is a completely different persona, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true.
So
But
that's
she's
the variant
Captain America.
thing in it.
Yeah.
Right, but she has the Britain.
Isn't she
She
Captain
has the
America?
British. No, I think she has like a British flag on. Like she has the Captain America shield, kind of, and the vibe. But I think she's
Yeah.
Captain Britain. I'm not sure. We're gonna see it in
Okay.
a little bit
Well,
and kind
anyway.
of clarify
Yeah.
that. But the only thing that I did want to say is here. See here, again. Here's the paradox of these conversations that make them so difficult. Because if you think about it, what could be the situation regarding Kang himself? He said himself that no matter what they chose, he'd be back in that chair regardless. So that again kind of flips it back. Even though he's making the choices are also making him in a sense, because no matter what anybody else chooses after he no longer sees the outcome, he still sits in the chair. He still wins the multiversal war. And we don't know when this is supposed to take place in the timeline. It could be about to take place as a result of what happened. It could be taking place at the
Yeah.
beginning of time. And that's a whole other mind-blowing conversation because time travel makes these things weird, right? Yeah.
Well, I think that that's less of a I think that that's less of a fate thing and more of a scientific law. I think that I think that and maybe AJ can help me here because AJ is I think the most sound collegiate voice possibly in a way, okay, but
He's accredited for this conversation.
There you go.
But what if Kang is not just a being, but he is a scientific law? Kang might just be describing like, well, I'm the one that's going to be in this chair because scientific law states that like if there is a Kang, if there are multiple Kang variants, one of them will eventually get to this chair and position that I'm in anyway. So I think it's less of a fate thing and more of a scientific law. Like it doesn't matter what universe you're in, gravity is gravity, and Apple will drop on Newton's head.
And Kang rules, Kang conquers. Like
That's
it's
the
a
way that I
scientific
look
law
at it.
he created, I guess, though.
No,
right?
not that he created, because he didn't create it, right? It's just that like him as a being, as a super intellect, discovered this whole timeline thing, and he's already gone through the entire. He's essentially gone through the entire formula, so he knows the answer to the formula is that like if it's left unchecked, there will be a Kang. I don't think that it's because he didn't predetermine that. Right?
Mhm.
But he's destined to be
He
there.
didn't predetermine at all. But is it destiny or is it law?
It's-
AJ,
it's
help me
in-
out.
it's
Here.
inevitable.
Oh, AJ, help us! My
It's
head's gonna explode.
inevitable.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's inevitable, not Thanos. What's up?
Yeah.
It's kind of tough.
I'm doing the mind blown meme right now because it is that kind of confusing.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. Do you believe that free will exists in the MCU? Let's
Yeah.
start there.
Yes, I do.
What is your example?
What makes
for
you
why?
think so?
Yeah,
Well, it's kind of what we touched on earlier. Like, how would Doctor Strange have seen those 14,605 right possibilities if they didn't exist? What if one of his variants is choosing one of those other possibilities, thinking, "Hey, this is actually the best one." Oh, no, wait, it's actually this one. What if there are 14 million Doctor Stranges? Doctor
there
Strange
are.
variants.
There are.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I guess the other thing, well, I think that's the best example of free will. Other than that, I can't really think of any others, to be honest. Well, I mean,
Loki himself, I guess, is the other prime example of free will in challenging the TVA and all of that At least maybe, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're implying.
you would
not
also-
really,
No.
not really, because remember in the show, Kang said, "Yeah, I engineered all that."
Yeah, I guess Tony Stark is another good example of free will, right? Because everything that occurred in Infinity War and Endgame was really predicated on the choices that Iron Man made, and you know, it was implied by Doctor Strange to Iron Man, and he even said, "I can't tell you what to do because you have to do it," right? Because if I tell you what to do, then it's predetermined. You already know what's going on. Iron Man had to make the choice to sacrifice himself to save everybody.
But was it a
You know?
choice, or did Kang allow it?
Yeah.
Kang
That
allowed
was-
it. Kang allowed it in that timeline. Were you going to say something, Eli? Go ahead.
Right.
No, that's just my thing with everything.
Mhm.
You could say that there are plenty of other choices that they could make, but it's always predetermined to make that one. The other choices would have been predetermined. So hold on.
Well, no.
Yeah,
It
because
could be
because
though. Eli's point is not terrible because if you think about it could be that
I
those
agree with
other
Eli.
choices were allowed by either variants of Kang or Kang when he said he's gone through a million different solutions. He could have been talking about 14,605,000. He could have been very
If you
specific,
want-
and he did the same thing as Doctor Strange, except he lived those. Well, Doctor Strange kind of did in his head, right? He lived those
Yeah.
those timelines, but so did Kang before he did, and he said, "Hey, Doctor Strange, you can choose from these, but you're going to choose this one." It's
Yeah.
That's why this is a
And-
weird conversation. Go ahead, Eli.
If you want true free will, the only way for you to have true free will is for you to make your own choice, not follow a predetermined one.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. It's impossible to create your own choice.
But-
so everything, therefore everything is predetermined.
But
there's nothing you could do to not follow Kang's predetermined choices because you have different paths. You're always set to follow one for each variant. You're all assigned practically to a
Well-
specific choice.
If that's the case, then why does he prune them?
What? Why does he prune them? Because they've reached the end of their line. There's always a an
No,
end
the
for
whole
each
point
choice.
the whole point of pruning a universe is to prevent a branch.
Well, then maybe it's just getting.
He's
too complicated.
removing the free will by preventing the branch from branching out.
Well, then maybe it's there is no free will. They're just. I guess maybe he's just trying to make it less complicated with like 1,000 branches. But I don't know.
That's what he said that he was trying to do. He's trying to it's like he's basically trying to be the lesser of two evils. As the way that's how he justifies it. He's like
Right.
either I take this chair and I make sure that there is no multiversal war. Or you take this chair and make sure there's no multiversal war because I'm kind of tired of this and stuff. Or we allow it to happen. Like which one's the greater of two? Which one's more evil? Right? Allowing free will to happen, therefore, then allowing. That's actually that's it. That's what he said right before his at least this version of Kang's end. It's either you take this chair, kill me, and take this chair and control the TVA because I'm tired of doing this for many, many thousands of years, or you allow the multiversal war to continue, and I take this chair anyway. And he did it with a smile and a grin.
You know what would be interesting to find out, and probably would lend a lot to this conversation. Was Kang snapped by the events in the Infinity War?
Definitely
Not,
not.
absolutely not.
No way.
Definitely.
Why not?
They exist
Because Infinity Stones don't do anything there. Those
They
those
exist
things have no
on-
power in the TVA. Remember,
That's
they're powerless.
That's true, but right, the stones itself are powerless there, but the actions maybe are far-reaching.
No,
besides
no,
that,
that doesn't
I'm
make
just
sense.
saying. I'm just saying.
because
Yeah, I'm
here's
just
there's
It's
two reasons
resounding
why.
no against what?
Yeah, I know. Wow.
There's two reasons why. One,
the wall
got snapped.
slammed shut. You know.
One, if he was in the TVA, it just wouldn't do anything because we've already seen that it's not there. Two, if people started disappearing in the past, the present, and the future, that would create huge problems for Kang. Because remember, the
Yeah.
Infinity Stones were only used at the point in time Thanos used
Mhm.
them.
Yep.
Mhm.
If they started making havoc throughout all of time, then that would like I don't see a reason why Kang would allow that.
Yeah, he
That's good.
That
That's a
and
good
he
point.
could get he could get it himself, but
Right. What that's kind of the point that I was trying to make is that if Kang did get snapped, right, then it kind of changes the conversation just maybe a little bit because he's allowing himself to get snapped because
No.
supposedly he knows everything that's going on. But I
Yeah,
guess you know what, you are right. That's a point that I'm missing. Time does work different in the TVA's
Yeah.
jurisdiction
but not
or
even
whatever.
that, because
you know?
remember, Kang shot himself to the end of time. That's where he was. What I'm saying is that I don't think uh the Infinity Stones don't God.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
they
Right?
don't they don't they don't snap people across time.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
isn't hold on. Oh wait, you go. You go.
Okay.
well,
Well,
I was just gonna ask, like, I was gonna ask Jose, but Eli, what did you want to say real quick?
yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna throw to
Kang-
Jose real quick.
Doesn't Kang exist beyond time? He's like not a part of time and
Well,
anything like
That's
that.
what's
The
implied.
TVA
Mhm.
the TVA exists outside of time, but remember, Kang was located at the end of time.
Oh.
They
So-
had to get to the end of time to
Oh,
get
okay.
to Kang.
Well, even
So
so,
technically,
yeah.
he was on the timeline.
So the Infinity Gauntlet has no bearing though. Yeah, like you said.
Yeah. On
I
the
guess.
TV,
What about
I
the
don't think
void?
so.
Does do the stones exist in the void? Does free? What about you, like Jose?
Yeah, I mean
Tell
that's
me, like,
kind of
the
my
void. Tell me
question.
about the
That's my
void.
question. Like I was kind of like saying that over here so y'all could see what my thoughts were, but like so we talk about how Kang or He Who Remains or whatever it says at the end of the episode. He says that he engineered everything. He laid down the path. He paved the road. Whatever it is, he says. And then you have the Lokis who are in the void, where I think it was boastful Loki said that the TVA doesn't care what happens there. But at the, like is that place the void at the end of time or whatever it is? Not at the end of time, but the void. Is free will exist there, or is it still something where? I guess my question is: does free will exist for maybe some of the people that Kang doesn't care about? Because he cared about, I guess, those specific Lokis that he used to engineer the end where Loki and Sylvie got to his citadel at the end of time. But outside of those people that he used to engineer those circumstances, do the other Lokis have free will? Do the other beings and variants that somehow managed to escape Alioth in that void have free will? Or does free will not kind of exist there either? And again, I guess we haven't really determined whether it exists in the MCU or not, but like, what are your guys' maybe thoughts on that kind of aspect of it? How does that change it at all?
Well, I think okay, so just to be clear, I think where Alioth is a point in the timeline. But Alioth as a being is so huge or something of that nature that he's oh god. He's so huge that he obscures a part of the timeline, which is where Kang is.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alioth is the void himself. I don't think where Alioth is the void. At least the way I understand it, Alioth is the void.
Okay.
Oh man,
Yeah.
my brain hurts right now.
But does
So the void exists on a spot
Wait,
in the
hold
timeline
on.
guarding the end of time.
but is I
Wait,
guess my
yo.
question is let me put it to you this way.
Yeah.
Is that a
What?
place where
Hold on.
Kang allows, like, he kind of quarantines free will? Think about that.
Yes, that's
right. That's where he
yeah, that's
quarantines
exactly
free will
right.
and allows it.
I can get
Kind
a,
of.
well, no, I can't get behind
That's
that.
very dangerous for him to do, though.
Yo.
because if that place is a quarantine for free will and you have the pathway to get to him in that place, that's a stumbling point for him.
But
Then.
what if only Loki and Sylvie
Because-
can do it
Hold
and
on.
he knew that? What if he knows that only they can get
yeah,
there?
he knew that. He
but then there's no
orchestrated it.
free
He's-
will there.
But that's what I'm saying. He said that, like, that's what he
You're
wanted.
back to that.
He's like even when Loki has said, "I killed your monster Goliath and whatever," he like laughed at him. I was like, "I know, everything that you've done, I orchestrated to lead you to here because Kang was done."
Oh, yo, okay, hold on.
Oh boy.
Goliath, is he considered the end of time? I just want to ask this question.
No,
he's the Guardian.
He's the Guardian.
Guardian.
He's like
Wait.
okay.
Yo,
He's like
He's
the
like
Cerberus.
Cerberus, right?
Yes, exactly, Walt. He's
Yeah,
like the
there you go.
Cerberus for Hades.
Think
Yo.
That's our
think of this as
mythology
the
right there, right?
timeline.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then you have Goliath just
This is the timeline. This is the end of time.
there. Yeah.
This is Goliath.
Wait, does that mean the end of time is predetermined? Oh wait, yeah.
Because
yeah,
Kang
wait.
is orchestrating it.
It's the end of
just-
time.
Yeah, I just realized. Wait,
Time has to end. So
But does it?
wait. So, what happens when Kang is gone? I mean, when that timeline is gone,
Which timeline?
what happens beyond that?
well,
The
now you have
multiverse of war.
yeah, you have multiple timelines.
Well,
branching
no,
out at
he's
that point.
talking about when time is ended.
Like
Like
This-
what happens?
the sacred timeline has
What
ended.
happened in Doctor Who?
I don't even
Different
remember,
universe.
but-
No. Don't. This
No,
universe
but-
alone
but-
is already
but-
hard.
But wait, Doctor Who has a lot of interesting
Yeah,
points
they
that I
do.
think the MCU may have borrowed from, because in Doctor Who,
I
Doctor
agree.
Who is a time traveling. What is
Being.
his phrase again? I forgot.
He's a time lord.
He's a Time Lord. Thank you very much. We used to watch. We were nerds of Doctor Who for a while, and the rules in Doctor Who were such that, you know what, things can be changed, but there were very specific points in time that could not be messed with. They were very, very specific in saying that yeah, you can make some minor changes here and there, but there were these finite points that had to happen in order for the timeline to continue to exist. Because if it didn't happen that way, then every time and space would start to crumble, and then you'd get into these weird things and whatnot. You know what I mean? So I maybe you're grabbing some of those ideas and putting them into the MCU as well, because just like everybody's been saying here, Kang knew that the events of the past 23 movies had to happen in order for him to continue his sacred timeline,
Similar to Doctor Who, it basically sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
This
You know.
conversation is like breaking my brain because I like about 10, 15 minutes ago
Mhm.
here in the group chat, I sent like a message that like kind of blew my mind a little bit. And I'm still kind of like unfrozen. And on the topic of free will, when I had mentioned the whole is Kang just a scientific law? Is and I guess we're kind of moving away from like MCU universe, but is free will in fact like human free will in a real life, real world right now, what
Mhm.
we're doing right here,
Mhm.
is free will just a scientific law of nature?
A scientific law of nature. Ooh,
Just
okay.
like gravity. Is free will a law of nature just like gravity? Right?
You
Because
really.
if you give sentient beings consciousness and the right to choose, then will everything that have to have happened because it's a scientific law of nature?
Well, here's my sort of mind-blowing kind of way to open the conversation, because if you think about it in quantum physics, I'm definitely no quantum physicist, but I like a little bit nerd out about like quantum physics and how mind-blowing
coffee.
all those ideas are, and quantum computing, which is becoming a huge thing. You guys have definitely heard of quantum computing, right? And in quantum physics, the thing that occurs a lot is that both states of something can exist at the same time. So what if, in some weird way, just like quantum physics, and when I say that, I'll give an example very quickly, right? So with light, here's an example. They do an experiment. Like, I'll try to make this as quick as possible. There's an experiment where they try to measure where light kind of hits a surface on the other side of like a light filter. So something that like will break up the light into I I think it's slatted. Okay. And what they find is that when the light hits the surface on the other side of this device, it becomes both a particle and a wave. All right. When you're talking about physics, that's kind of a weird thing that only light does. So another example is in quantum computers. The reason that they're supposed to be so advanced possibly is that instead of the way that computers work now, where it's binary, it's either on or off, right? That's computing. It's 1 or 0. That's what on and off is essentially. It can exist again in a state that's both off and on at the same time. So what if free will both does and does not exist because of the way the laws of the universe work? Okay, let's open up the floor to that idea.
What?
Can we even answer it after that?
Exactly.
What?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we should kind of skip that, but like, it's a possibility.
Well,
You
no.
What I do find interesting though is that I don't know necessarily how well this lends itself to predetermination and free will, but you look at the way time works in other properties. For instance, you can technically go back in time and try to quote unquote change things, but then quote unquote all you'd really be doing is creating another universe. So technically you're not influencing time the way you want it to because you can't. So
Not in that
does
universe.
Theoretically.
exactly. So does free will exist really? Because what you're trying to influence, you cannot influence.
That's the butterfly effect.
Its whole,
Yeah.
like, it's on its own predetermined path. So even though you try to change it, all you end up doing is just creating another universe.
So that, yeah, exactly.
If we believe in the multiversal
Yeah, that
theory,
only works if
know?
we believe in the multiverse theory. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Right.
But again, that's what I mean. Some
AJ
properties use it, some don't.
AJ's right though, in that that's theoretically how some actual scientists and physicists posit that this thing works, because it's theoretically possible to go back in time, and you can actually go forward in time very easily if you think about how time is influenced by gravity. If there's a whole conversation to have there, but the way that GPA satellites work is that they're off time in a they're slightly off time compared to the time on Earth, because gravity influences time the closer you are to the source of gravity. So the closer you are to Earth, I believe the faster time goes. Anyway, you can technically go back in time, but if you do, according to theoretical physics, like AJ said, you're creating a new timeline. You can't influence time. You can't go back in time and like kill Hitler. That's the answer that we always, or the example that's always used. So in a way, because of what AJ is saying, yes, it does become, again, sort of predetermined, but also the choice for you to go back in time and create the loop in the first place possibly is free will. Go ahead.
So here's the
What's-
thing, and I
Well-
think that like I want to bring this back a little bit to the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
The problem is choice, right?
Mhm.
The problem is giving people the I think choosing is free will itself. Maybe not the actions, the physical actions stuff, but the problem is choice. And it's funny because if you I'm a fan of Norse mythology, and I have read all of the Norse mythology, all the original stories, some of the interpretations. Neil Gaiman has a great anthology book of all the Norse Norse stories.
Yeah,
But
we have that book.
Loki is often, I think, misinterpreted as the god of mischief, but what he really is the god of choice. What Loki does in Norse mythology is that he creates chaos by giving people the ability to choose to do things that they want, not just things that they're supposed to do. He introduces mischief and chaos by letting people know that, hey, you can do what you want, even if it may not be like the good thing or the nice thing or the heroic thing. Here's this hammer, go hit someone on the head with it. So the problem is choice.
Go be
And
mischievous.
it's funny that 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 Marvel is sort of kind of reinterpreting Loki through the show as its true Norse counterpart, like in the actual Norse mythology books,
instead of what it
by
was before, right? It's kind of like
having
Puck from
choice,
Shakespeare.
yeah, having choice and fate and destiny be the whole topic of Loki. You know,
It's interesting. It's
Can I make just
okay.
one
Sorry.
very small point to kind of, again, there's the duality to all of these points that we're making. I agree with that. And also think about the fact that in Norse mythology, Loki is going through a loop of his own. It's death, rebirth, Ragnarok, death, rebirth, Ragnarok,
Right.
death, rebirth, Ragnarok. So is that predetermined as well? Well, go ahead, Walt. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting the way that Loki you described him, because there's another person in religion that acts very much the same way, and that's the fallen angel, right? And the whole premise of the Garden of Eden and whatnot, bringing this from mythology into religion, because what is it that gets both Adam and Eve kicked out of the Garden of
I
Eden?
see what you're saying.
it's
Is choice, right? Because you have him come to them in the form of that snake, right?
Mhm.
And say, hey, this guy's telling you don't eat from this tree, don't bite this apple and stuff like that. But I'm saying, hey, it's your choice. You know what I'm saying? And that's literally what gets them kicked out. And from that point on, in the religious text, God really kind of takes a back step with humans and say, you know what, I gave you the perfect Eden, I gave you the perfect place to live in, and you chose not to live there because you went against my rules. Now you're on your own. I'll oversee what you guys are doing, but I'm not taking an active
That's
thing
so
in your day-to-day lives. You have free will to make your choice. You can either choose to follow my teachings, or you can choose to follow his way.
that's
So
Kang.
again,
That's Kang right there.
right,
Kang,
exactly.
Loki and Sylvie are Adam and Eve.
There you
That's
go.
actually a good
I
point.
mean,
He
you
basically was
can't
like,
get
Wow, I
more.
never
like
really thought about it like that.
either you can live in my
Mhm.
Eden, which is this TVA controlled multiverse,
Mhm.
okay, in which I dictate what you can and cannot do and what your fate is, or you can
Wow.
choose to do what you want and then live in HE double hockey sticks. This
And
That
multiverse of war.
just got so much
And
There you
Oh
go.
deeper.
my god!
Kang had an apple.
There you go.
Kang was eating an apple as soon as he showed up.
Kang was eating that.
So,
oh
or
my
maybe
God.
he's the devil.
What in the fuck?
He's the snake, right?
No,
He's the one that
no,
provided
I don't
them
think
with
he's the
the
snake.
Well,
gambit. Well, he could be.
no.
Maybe he's all of them.
The
Kind of.
apple
Kind
the
of.
apple was in Eden. The apple was in Eden, right?
But he also
So he didn't
tempted
give them
them
the
with.
apple. He just presented the apple.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. He presented
No,
it.
no, no.
Yeah,
He
So
didn't
he's
he
tempt
kind
them.
tempted
of
them with the choice.
he's kind of God and the devil, the fallen angel, at the same time. In this, if you think about it, in this mythology, sort of, because
Okay, well, yeah.
he's
God.
controlling,
Yeah.
But
but
still,
he's also
it's
providing that
still like it's
choice.
just
I don't know. I mean, that's kind
it's
of
never in
a little bit how I see
dualities.
it. What did you say, Eli?
Yeah.
No, it's just I just said it's never in dualities. That's what I think it was Einstein's
It's never in
thing
dualities,
where it's
or what do you?
oh my God.
yeah. There's always like an in between. That's why
What?
no. Okay. No, it was just no. I was just saying you have Loki, which is I mean it's oh god no. It's just trialities or whatever.
It sounds like you were about to make a duality yourself.
No, trialities.
There's always the gray, right?
Yeah,
There's
there's
never
always the
just
gray.
black
there you
and
go.
white. There's
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
the gray.
That's what I said. That's no.
So is
There's
There's always
Kang
something in between.
he who remains? Is he the as we noted
I don't
earlier?
know.
Is he the true ultimate power in that multiverse and universe? Is
I
he like
think-
one
No,
above
because
all?
he's
Well,
hold on.
he could be one of those absolute powers, but if we know Marvel Comics, there is certainly more than one.
Yeah,
There's always a bigger fish.
there's a one
But-
above that one.
To be fair, he controls practically time. He controls time, so everything that they do is predetermined.
or at least to the point that
But
we
what
Yes,
if-
but there are bigger characters. There's still bigger characters in
Well,
the
yeah,
Marvel
in terms of
universe.
power,
That's what
yeah.
I'm saying.
and
But
we.
what if
Go.
Kang is, huh?
No, I was just gonna say
What
we
if
don't know how
Kang
much of time
is-
he controls.
Yeah.
because in the comics he controls a portion.
Well,
of
yeah.
time. But go ahead, Eli. Go ahead.
And that's what I'm saying.
Mm,
What if
mhm.
Kang is predetermined?
That we don't know yet. That we don't know
Well,
yet.
to be fair, he sort of is, because if you're following the laws of time, then
Well, he
he's just
predetermined.
following time.
But that's the thing. He's predetermining himself by preserving the timeline the way it is.
Yeah.
All right,
But
I think
that
I think
itself
that, like, we're
is a
breaking this.
choice.
This is like this is being broken right now.
But that
Now,
itself
what
is
if-
a choice, Eli.
Because
Now,
I think
what
we
if-
can like go around in circles on on whether Kang, what's like, it's like the chicken and egg thing is like the
Which
Kang
came
or the
first?
Kang. Which one
Yeah.
came first?
Well, you
Did Kang predetermine himself, or
Well, wait. The chicken and the egg. What do you mean by that? Like,
Which
Which one came
which
first?
one came
What?
first?
The chicken or
Which
the
one?
egg?
well, yeah, but like, what are the two options?
The chicken or the
This
egg?
No. And,
He
like,
means
terms
in the
of
Marvel
egg-
No, those are the
universe.
two chapters. No, it just in.
Did the egg come first and then the chicken was born of it, or
Yes, I
was there
know,
a
but, like,
chicken
I
before
know
that
how that
laid
works.
the
Not
egg?
listening.
I know
to
how that
him.
works. I know how that works. The chicken, because the chicken had to be born from the egg, but did the chicken lay the egg? I know how that works. I'm talking about the MCU.
Yeah. Well,
What two options do you have? Kang or what? Time?
Well, here's the way that it works in the comics
Oh.
to kind of provide context for that. In the comics, He Who Remains is a totally separate character from Kang the Conqueror, from Immortus, from all of them. He Who Remains is the person who started the TVA in the comics. But the weird thing is that he, like AJ said, predetermines his destiny, because the He Who Remains becomes the creator of the TVA at the end of time, so that, I believe he creates the timekeepers, who then go to the beginning of time and create the TVA, so that He Who Remains can be ensured to then exist again at the end of time, so that he can create the timekeepers again at the end of time, and they can create the TVA again at the beginning of time. So that's kind of how it works in the comics.
Oh God.
It's predetermined destiny, which is why maybe again it's kind of like maybe that is the law of physics. There's free will and destiny at the same time, crashing into each other in balance like everything else. And yeah, my mind is starting to like curdle at the thought of
Wait.
all this.
I think my
Yo,
brain is fried.
hold
I don't
on.
think that I can.
Yo.
I don't. Oh.
What's up, Eli?
What
We-
if? What? Okay, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I'm following the sort of logic, or I'm following the principles that what is it? Dark followed, a show that we watched. I think we
Mhm.
mentioned it on this podcast
Yeah.
before.
Okay.
But what if there's a bigger Kang? So you know how you have the multiverse.
Well, the bigger
But
Kang.
let's just put it this way. I just realized how stupid this sounds, but I'm just gonna say it anyway.
He's just gonna go with
Right?
it.
It's also
He's
brilliant
using
at
his
the
free
same
will to
time.
go with it.
It's brilliant and stupid.
Yeah.
All of this is.
So, what if you have like a tree? Let's just put it like this:
Of
like
life.
a tree. I
Tree of
mean,
might.
no, but like
Ooh.
each branch is a timeline, and then you have the branches sprouting from those branches, and the branches sprouting. So, what if there's a bigger Kang controlling that tree, and then there's multiple trees, and then you have the Garden of Eden?
I think that's where it's going to
Yeah,
go.
something crazy like that.
I think that's
So
kind
that
of
means
where
there's
it's
a
gonna
bigger
go.
Kang.
That's already
on.
where Kang is or was.
No, but he's controlling each branch.
including
Exactly.
that one is what he's saying.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
don't
not
know, that-
including
that-
the whole entire tree itself.
That gets really
And oh God,
A Kang above a Kang kind of
Yes, because-
defeats the
No, but-
purpose
no,
of
but
Kang.
you have different branches,
Not
but the
exactly.
branches.
that
Well, I
gets
mean,
No,
no.
hold on.
that gets
Listen.
exponential very, very
But
quickly.
that's what Kang
Hold
does
on.
in the
Yes, I
comics.
know, that's-
Council of Kangs.
Hold-
Just saying.
We
Go ahead, Eli.
are
Because,
we
look,
are losing
think of,
this.
wait, hold
Yeah.
on.
Go ahead.
Think of it like what I'm trying to say here is that all the branches came from one point in time, technically
Okay.
speaking. Well, yeah, it did. Because it's
Yeah.
all branching from one place. So does that mean that there's one king because there was originally a sacred timeline there, and then it started branching? Does that mean that King was originally watching over the tree, until it started growing and creating branches.
So you're saying
Yes.
that the sacred
And no.
timeline in the MCU is a branch from a bigger sacred timeline.
Yes,
He's
and
saying
then
that
Yes
there's a
and no.
multiversal multiverse.
Well,
it's freaking
technically,
Yggdrasil.
This is way
well,
up.
Kang
is-
already
this is
went
there.
over that. It was part of a larger multiverse. He just
Oh, we just
decided
lost
his
Wolfie.
multiverse was the multiverse that he was gonna
Now,
like. This is gonna be the main timeline.
does that mean there are different multiverses? I mean, no, that
Yes.
just sounds.
They've
sounds
already
And
been
no.
No,
eliminated.
no, no. I'm talking about, are there different trees? What would you
No,
consider
Yes.
these trees?
well,
And no.
I
But
don't
then,
think
how,
so.
wait,
no.
but then the branches don't entangle.
Yo,
so how
no,
would they?
no,
that
no,
means
no,
there's
no.
a Kang on top of a Kang on top of
Yes,
a Kang
I
on
know.
top
That's
of
what
a
I'm saying. It's
Kang.
freaking
Wait.
Yggdrasil.
And then there's
Let me
3 more
the
Kangs on
whole
top
con-
of those
what
10
I'm trying-
Hold on,
Kangs.
Eli. Let me organize
the whole
this for
concept
you.
That I'm trying.
Let me organize this for you, because I know what you're trying to say, and I agree possibly with what you're trying to say as well. What you're saying is that the Kangs that we've seen, even the statue of that Kang, is probably not the Kang in control, which has precedent in the comic. To be fair to Eli's theory,
So on and so forth.
there's the Kang, the prime Kang creates Kang robots, just like Doctor Doom, that are effectively just like Kang, have all of Kang's same powers, and think that they're Kang. So it's possible, but we know that the MCU doesn't always take one for one from the comics. So I'm not sure they're going to do that, because that might get a little too complicated for movies. So there's that. And we should definitely wrap this up. So maybe make a quick
What was
point,
I
Eli.
gonna say? Wait. What was I gonna say?
I don't know. You tell us.
It's freaking Yggdrasil. You have like different branches and branches and branches. Oh God, no.
Oh, and
I had a no.
There's a writer from Rick and Morty that is involved in this, and there's a council of Ricks in Rick and Morty. So that's all I will say. That's all. That's my closing point.
You have the original. Wait, but then that would mean there's infinite. Kangs.
Yes.
Well, of course there are always infinite.
But you said that
But
already.
How do you get to the source? Wait,
Eli,
but
you
got
gotta
to
stop. You're gonna explode.
He should be.
You're gonna explode.
How did he create? No. How did he? No, hold on. How did he create the timeline? Because does that
He
mean
didn't create the timeline.
No, because you're a variant. That's how you create timelines. So technically, you would have to create the tree. You had to plant it. Who planted the tree?
It was the
It
one.
That
can't
is
be
that
Kang.
is that
Yes,
is the
exa-
ultimate question. That is.
I think we're gonna.
I don't think that's a
who
Kang.
is God.
No, that's
Yeah.
not a Kang.
We're gonna
Eli.
see an
That's
answer.
not a Kang.
It's
All right. I think that we need to segue
Yo.
off this topic into the
Yo.
end. Leave this topic. Leave this.
Wait,
for
does that mean
more
each
future
tree is a branch?
Eli's head
Each
is.
tree is
No.
a branch.
Is steam
No.
coming?
There aren't any trees. It's branches.
Is
now.
steam coming out of
They're all
Eli's
branches.
ears right now? Walt, is steam?
I guess you're just looking. You're looking at the tree from like a smaller picture, so it looks big. But then when you
At the
zoom
end of
out,
this,
it's just a
by
branch.
the end of this episode, when we're done, he's gonna have a tinfoil hat on.
By the time we're
Space blanket.
By the time we're done,
Space blankets.
But by the time Eli gets done figuring this out, we're going to be sitting in front of He Who Remains, having this conversation
He
at
is
the end of time.
He is the meme from. He is the meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, the guy.
Yeah. He's like, hear me out
in
now.
front of the
Oh, Charlie in front of the
Hear me out.
chalkboard. Yeah,
Yes.
Charlie in
Yes.
front of the chalkboard, and that for the Sunny fans, he's talking about Pepe
God.
Sylvia. Pepe Sylvia. Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's wind this down before all of our heads explode.
All right.
I think, guys, right? It's time to do that. This was a fun
Each
episode.
tree is a branch.
Each tree is a branch, and it's also not. All right.
I have.
What's up?
I'm gonna create something real quick. No, this is for outside of us.
Are you doing a
I'm gonna
variation?
create something real quick. You'll see it soon.
All right. So what I'm gonna
You
do?
guys just gave me an idea.
I'm going to close this out for all of us. We want to thank y'all for joining us on this conversation for the Get Geek podcast. And as y'all know, the best way to support the Get Geek podcast is to like, rate, share, and subscribe. Follow us on all of our social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever else you guys social media, I should say. Definitely check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, wherever your favorite podcasts are sold. Send us some reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts. That really, 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 really helps us out. So, yeah. After that great conversation, thank you all very much for joining us for this conversation on Loki, the MCU, and free will. And I guess there's nothing left to say. Or maybe there is something left to say. I'm not sure if I have a choice or not to say this, but Stay geeky, my friends.
Last thing. There is no end to time. Because if you think about it, you have Alliance, but then what comes after
Loops.
that? Another tree, or I should say another branch.
Loops.
So
It's a
they're chopping up.
Mobius strip.
They're chopping up branches.
It's a Mobius
They're
strip.
chopping up branches.
It's a Mobius. Walt's busy like looking at something right now. He doesn't realize that he has control of this, or he does, and he's just letting this continue until Eli. Eli is on fire.
Branches.
Eli's head is on fire right now. It has
Cutting
to
up
be.
branches.
It has to
No,
be.
I'm cutting up. He's cutting up branches, but who's the one? Oh wait,
The
wait.
one
no,
above
no,
all.
You want your answer? I'll give you your answer. Yes, exactly. So remember, the MCU,
Iron Man is alive. Peggy
the
Carter has turned into
I
Hulk.
think Wolfie needs
the
to leave.
MCU.
Because he had
Yes.
you had time constraints. He
this
needs to
is-
leave.
We're transitioning.
All right, yeah.
We're
At least
transitioning.
we
from
could keep
He
talking.
Who remains, he who closes
scroll
this
is
podcast
Captain
Stop it so
Marvel.
we
right
can
now.
download at least. We can continue to talk some BS for a
Yes,
few minutes. but
later.
Let's download this so that we
Scroll is
get that
Captain
out.
He
Marvel.
who closes this podcast right now.
Venom is Carnage.
Peace out, people. This was a fun episode. Later, guys.